Okay, so we are here. We are at the conclusion of the Waking the Dragons arc. Thank you guys so much for sticking through this with me. I actually really appreciate it. Anyway, so we get into these few final episodes here. Well, I really wouldn't say it's a few episodes. We have about, I don't know, I think 10 to go by. I think 10 left to go. Before this arc is officially done. And then we move on to the Grand Championship and everything. But anyway, so we last left off with the Pharaoh and the others making their way towards Dartz' lair. And we pick up with them in doing so. Dartz explains that he's been collecting souls for 10,000 years. I kind of forgot how long. I don't really remember if there was a difference in years in the Japanese version of it, because I know that with the Pharaoh's memories, it's in the sub, I believe it's 3,000 versus 5,000 in the dub. I'm not 100% certain about that. Could someone correct me in the comments about that, please? But anyway, so being a soul collector for 10,000 years, there is a room in his lair that has millions of people in it on its walls, and with some based on their clothing to clearly have existed in medieval times. And when I was first watching this, I was thinking, wow, anime teaching you a little about world history. This is quite fascinating. Dartz challenges Seto and the Pharaoh to a final duel, which begins almost immediately. And their first move is actually a tag team one, in which they summon the Mastery of Dragon Knight, a card that I always wanted as a kid because of how awesome it looked. Dartz activates the seal, claiming that it was forged from the darkness itself. More on the seal itself in a bit, but there's a little issue that crops up here regarding its power. One that the fan base has been more than gracious enough to point out to me. Thanks, you guys. Dartz then summons Orichalco's Kotora? I don't know. Which basically renders both of their attacks useless, and the duel is basically put at a standstill. They attack the Orichalco's Gygus, but it doesn't work due to Kotora's ability, which allows it to absorb all of the damage done by the attack, as well as leave Dartz completely unharmed, including his monsters. They are then given a vision by the Orichalcos, with Dartz explaining that it's the way the seal communicates. He then shows them the day that he encountered the Orichalcos himself. Now, we get a lot of exposition here regarding Atlantis, so bear with me. Dartz states here that the Orichalcos stones allowed the Atlanteans, or the citizens of Atlantis if you will, to advance heavily in technology, but that greed and violence eventually took over during Dartz' reign, his 21st birthday in fact. The Orichalcos literally began transforming wicked people into monstrous beasts, with Dartz then encountering the Orichalcos, and he states that he had been chosen to wipe the people of Atlantis clean off the map and to start over again. So pretty much the Orichalcos chose him and basically willed it so that he would commit a mass genocide on his own people. That's really dark and sick. But there was one person that stood in Dartz' way, his own father Ironheart, who eventually gathered an army of monsters to fight against Dartz and his army. Now, neither side of the battle was victorious, and we were actually told this, well, we were given hints about this when, back when we first met Ironheart and Chris, after the Pharaoh's duel with Weevil, earlier on. But anyway, so, like I said before, neither side of this battle was victorious, with Ironheart's monsters being sealed away until they were needed again. I have a crazy little fan theory of mine, but I don't think I'll get into it until we're in Season 5, as, well, we'll actually be in the right context. But, please don't spam the comment section asking what the theory is. I think you'll be quite surprised when we finally get into Season 5 after the next filler arc. But anyway, so after Dartz explains this, they are transported back to the lair and the duel continues. Dartz activates Orichalcos Deuteros, strengthening the seal and giving it new abilities, such as it giving Dartz an extra 1,000 life points thanks to his two monsters out on the field. He then summons 4 Mirror Knights onto the field and they wipe out the Master of Dragon Knight in a single blow. Thanks to an attack from Seto, the Knights? I don't know. I'm sorry. The Knights' helmets crack and they all fall off, revealing Yugi, Joey, Pegasus, and Mai underneath. Dartz then drops the bombshell, saying that if they destroy the Knights, they'll destroy their friends in the process. basically giving them an ultimatum in the process. Dartz orders Mirror Knight Yugi to attack the Pharaoh, but the knight fights back momentarily, with Dartz being somewhat stunned. Seto then selects Mirror Knight Mai to attack. Dartz then says that Seto should only be worried if destroying an innocent soul concerns him. To which Seto replies with this extremely humorous line. It's actually kind of funny. Here, have a listen to it.
So you've got a dweeb army. Am I supposed to be scared to attack?
Well, only if destroying an innocent soul concerns you.
Nah. As the president of a major corporation, I have to do that every day.
Now, as you can see from that clip, it's kind of funny, but it also shows how oblivious Seto is sometimes to all that's going on around him. But anyway, the attack continues, but Mirror Knight Joey steps in to save Mai. Seto then says that it figures that Joey would mess things up. Oh, and side note, Seto has kind of had a really big thing going for Joey. As in, he just absolutely hates him. Absolutely despises Joey for some odd reason. It's never really explained. I think Kaiba's just jealous because of the fact that Joey, who started out as a nobody, basically rose to technically be better than him when it comes to dueling, in terms of motivation. But then again, that could just be my fanboy theory rearing its ugly head. But anyway, so yeah, I'm curious, what do you guys think? Why do you guys think that Kaiba hates Joey? Leave a comment and let me know, please. We can get a little discussion going. But anyway, back to the review. So the Pharaoh has no choice but to stall because he's afraid of destroying the knights and thus destroying his friend's souls. Seto loses most of his life points and retaliates by attacking Mirror Knight Joey, stating that Joey has held him back for the last time. Which you can also see as Kaiba getting revenge for whatever it is that Joey did. Again, I have no idea why Seto's hatred of Joey is so immense. Can someone please explain? Anyway, Mirror Knight Yugi blocks the attack, but he loses his shield. The Pharaoh destroys one of Dartz's cards and he attacks Seto. Seto defends himself using a trap, but all of the damage is absorbed by Dartz's tutorial once again. Mirror Knight Yugi then communicates with the Pharaoh, telling him to attack and to trust him. And before Dartz can make his next move, Raphael bursts into the room on his motorbike. Now this is where that revelation that I was talking about earlier on in this review segment comes into play. Raphael claims that the Pharaoh set him free from the darkness. But Dartz counters, stating that the darkness is not gone from Raphael's heart in its entirety. He then tries to manipulate Raphael, using the tablets around the room as examples of people that were consumed by greed. Raphael says that he's done being angry with the world, and that the Pharaoh and his friends taught him the true meaning of loyalty. Dartz, however, just laughs at this, and he states that the seal didn't corrupt Raphael's mind, and that in fact, it exposed who he was on the inside. Looking deeper into this, it could be argued that exposing who they are on the inside could mean reeling back the curtain and showing what hides behind it. Dartz states that the reason why he chose Alistair, Valen, and Raphael in the first place was because of the anger that each of them had on the inside. Here comes the revelation, so brace yourselves. It's kind of a big one in my eyes. Dartz goes over all three of their backstories one by one, so I'll just break them down here for you. These backstories also contain new footage, which I will be showing off here. Anyway, here we go. Alistair. Dartz reminds us that Alistair and his brother were captured by Gozaburo Kaiba. But he also states that, contradictory to what Alistair said, Gozaburo didn't actually do a thing. It was all Dartz, as he was posing as Gozaburo, selling the weapons and eventually killing Mikey. Valen. Dartz reminds us that Valen grew up in a detention center. But also contradictory to what Valen said, Dartz states that he framed Valen for his initial crime, which landed him in the detention center and started off that flow of events in the first place. And finally, we get to possibly the most tragic one of all, Raphael. Again, Dartz reminds us of the shipwreck that Raphael mentioned in his first duel with the Pharaoh. But he reveals that he was the one that led the ship into the typhoon in the first place, which basically resulted in Raphael being stranded, and like I mentioned before, basically led him into Dartz's service, and basically led him into basically forced Raphael to be played directly into Dartz's hands. Dartz then states that he saw Raphael master duel monsters at a young age and that he could use those abilities for his own gain. These new details only serve to make the backstories of these three men all the more heartbreaking, and it adds an entirely new layer of evil to Dartz's character. This revelation understandably angers Raphael, but the seal suddenly appears and takes his soul. Not sure how that happens, but I do have an out-of-universe explanation that may help. So, please bear with me, but let's go back over these events once more. So, Raphael was set free from his darkness thanks to his duel with the Pharaoh. Okay, I got that. But then he discovers all of this new information about his past, and that it was Dartz this whole time that caused all of it to go wrong. Okay, got it. Raphael is angered by the news. Understandable. The seal appears and takes Raphael's soul. Now, while this makes little sense logically, as there was no one else that played a second seal of Orichalco's card, and since Raphael wasn't dueling anyone, it does make sense metaphorically, so allow me to explain. When people are angry about something, all it takes is one more little push to make them explode in fury and tip over the edge, with disastrous results. In this case, Raphael was set free from his darkness, but it re-emerges after he finds out the information about his past that Dartz states. This causes Raphael to go nuts, resulting in his soul being taken. I'm gonna do a bad analogy here, but look at it this way. Imagine that you've known someone for a very long time. Everything's going great, and then they tell you something that completely changes the way you look and think about them. The news gets you fired up, angry, and you attempt to lash out. But it doesn't go well, and you must then face the negative consequences of that action. The seal appearing in this moment, at least to me anyway, represents a metaphor for losing your temper and having an outburst. The only difference here is, well, as soon as you have that outburst, you're basically punished in the most punishing way, no pun intended, with your soul being taken, which is the ultimate consequence. Anyway, once Raphael is gone, Dartz plays a card called Orichalcos Thlytos, which is essentially Darkness times 3. Dartz then attacks Seto with the hopes of wiping him out, and only for Seto to counter using a trap. Or a spell, my bad. But Dartz retaliates by stating that thanks to the seal's third layer, none of their spells or traps work at all. Wow, talk about a powerful card combination. This thing kind of beats Yugioh out by a long shot, although I'm just curious, who do you think would win if as soon as the seal was played, someone basically had all 5 pieces of Yugioh in their hands? I'm curious. I'm pretty sure Yugioh would win simply because, well, it's an instant win in the regular card game, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Dartz attacks again, only for the Pharaoh to save Seto using a trap. Okay, this is a trap card, and Seto's spell card was nullified. This kind of puts the seal's power into question. Why didn't Dartz negate the trap's effect? After all, less than a minute ago, he negated Seto's spell card perfectly fine. Narrative convenience, I suppose. So, Dartz has all 4 Mirror Knights attack the Pharaoh. But when Mirror Knight Pegasus attacks, he communicates with the Pharaoh, stating that the card he gave the Pharaoh earlier on in the arc, the blank one, unlocks the secret of the legendary dragons. Seto plays Mirror Force Dragon by combining Critias with the Pharaoh's Mirror Force trap, and using its power he destroys all 4 of Dartz's knights. It seems as if the 4 souls aren't actually inside of the knights themselves, as we see them perfectly fine later on. Plus, Mirror Knight Yugi confirms this by signaling that they'll be fine after the attack hits. Dartz's Q-Tora, however, evolves into a new monster. Wow, so now Dartz is ripping off Pokemon. Awesome, yay! But it's no laughing matter though. Dartz's new beast not only has 20,000 points, but it also has devastating abilities to match. As Dartz describes it, it is the perfect sword and shield. And as a demonstration, he attacks Seto's dragon, wiping it out, as well as Seto. But before his soul is captured, Seto plays his last trap, which restores the Pharaoh's life points. After this, Seto's soul is taken. Once this is done, Dartz renders the others completely unconscious. He then reveals something that's both a great bit of info But that's also kind of a letdown. Let me explain. So Dartz says that he met the Pharaoh during his reign, in the year 3000 BC, 5000 in the Japanese sub, and that Dartz craved his life force, but that the time wasn't right and that he had to wait for the Pharaoh to return. But the thing that disappoints me is, well, spoilers, but after the Grand Championship, which is actually the next arc we'll be covering, like I mentioned earlier, the Pharaoh's Memories arc comes up. The Memories arc takes place almost entirely within the Pharaoh's ancient past. However, there isn't a single mention of Dartz at all within it. Now, I understand why there isn't one in the manga, since, well, there is no manga counterpart to Waking the Dragons. But it would have been a great bit of continuity if the anime version of the arc actually addressed Dartz in any significant fashion. Heck, just show him looking at the Pharaoh and monologuing about how he wants his power for the Leviathan. Now, as the Memories arc takes place after Waking the Dragons, this would cause some initial confusion, but at least it would be a slight nod to Dartz as a character, and it wouldn't have reduced him to cannon fodder and someone who's forgotten after one battle. The thing that I really like from this talk, though, is that Dartz says that when the Pharaoh asks him why he didn't confront him back then, Dartz states because there was another person that was looking to destroy the world, and that he was getting in Dartz's way. That's a very big bit of foreshadowing, as, again, spoiler alert, well, I'll just say that the villain of that particular arc has been around a lot longer than you might think. And I'll reveal it when we actually get to that point. We finally catch up with Joey, Yugioh, and Pegasus, who are all trapped inside the belly of the Leviathan within bubbles.
Yay! Bubble party!
Pegasus reveals the significance of the card that he gave to the Pharaoh. Again, it's the one that was a blank. Here, have a listen. It's really intriguing and awesome.
During the Battle of Atlantis, Dartz transformed 3 brave knights into dragons in an effort to weaken them. Now the Pharaoh must restore them to their original form.
Dartz tries to get the Pharaoh to surrender, but it doesn't work, with the Pharaoh stating that Dartz only reminded him that his friends are always by his side. He then draws the card that Pegasus gave him, revealing it to be the Legends of Heart. Playing it, 3 knights descend from on high, having been transformed from the dragons themselves. The knights then use their powers to completely annihilate the seal, which was a real cheer out loud moment for both Jules and me upon rewatch.
Yeah!
And using the knights, the Pharaoh destroys Dartz's monster. However, by destroying Dartz's monster, his divine serpent was born, with infinite strength no less. The Pharaoh then summons the Dark Magician Girl, putting his fate in her hands, which is a really nice touch in my opinion. Remember, the Dark Magician Girl has kind of been the catalyst behind them getting the dragon cards in the first place. She was sacrificed by the Pharaoh in his first duel with Raphael, and now she's here to defend the Pharaoh one last time. Very cool. However, the Pharaoh, once again using the Knights' abilities, manages to destroy the serpent. Okay, this I really like. So please forgive this analogy, but to me it's a biblical story mixed with some Arthurian lore. The evil and wicked serpent is slain by 3 noble and courageous knights. Very impressive and awesome. Yugi, Joey, and Seto are all restored and they go after Dartz. They summon all of their best monsters to attack the Leviathan, which Dartz basically fused with in order to make it rise, but it's no good. And eventually, they're all sucked into it. The Pharaoh calls on all of the good energy of the people that are inside the Leviathan, and they, as well as the Egyptian god cards themselves, are freed, culminating in a final battle with the Pharaoh and Dartz in the skies above. The Egyptian gods in turn annihilate the Leviathan, and Dartz is free from the Orichalcos' influence. The Pharaoh after this, however, is sucked up by a giant vortex, which is literally destroying him from the inside out. But the Pharaoh, with the help of all the goodness within his heart, seals not only that darkness away, but the Leviathan as well, once again allowing Dartz to be freed from the Orichalcos' influence. They all then escape, and this filler arc closes with Yugi washing up on the shore of an island, and the others eventually finding him, leading us into the next arc, which is, of course, the Grand Championship. As I mentioned before, when the review of this arc first began, it's very dividing when it comes to the fanbase. Like I said, and also like I said when I first started this, I'm not one of those people that outright hates this arc simply because it's filler. It has flaws, but so do the other seasons, and so do some of the later ones in my opinion. They're very minute, but they are flaws, and I will not let my fanboyness get in the way. Dartz was an interesting villain. Although looking at his backstory, it turns out that he wasn't actually the villain and that the Orichalcos was. There's an old phrase, hate the sin, not the sinner, and Dartz falls right into that line for me. What he did wasn't actually his fault. It was all the Orichalcos' fault from the second he made contact with that stone. So he's kind of a sympathetic antagonist to an extent. The main struggle that the Pharaoh goes through in this arc is dealing with his pride and with his inner darkness. I wouldn't say he deals with his own morality necessarily, although he kind of does in terms of what Dartz says to him about being evil. Now in retrospect, we all know that he isn't evil, and that he was indeed a noble ruler. But Dartz's insight does offer some intriguing what-if possibilities. This arc is simple. The protagonist loses someone and goes to get them back. The only difference here is that the protagonist is really someone that we haven't gotten to know all too well up until this point. But now we know exactly what the Pharaoh is about, and later down the line, we're told everything that we need to know in order to understand his character within the context of the narrative. The animation is top-notch here, and the voice acting is phenomenal. With that said, there are a couple things that hold this arc back for me. The origin of the Orichalcos itself is nowhere to be found, and the fact that we never see Maya again after this, aside from a slight cameo appearance at the end of Season 5, is kind of a letdown. With all this said, I'm going to give the Waking the Dragons arc a 3 out of 5. Excellent plot, great character motives, interesting villains for the most part. But the origin of the Orichalcos is never explained, and again, the lack of seeing certain characters after this, aside from a brief appearance in Season 5, brings this arc down a little bit in terms of quality. Is it good? Yes. But is it great? Well, not so much, unfortunately. Also, I kind of made a mistake. Yeah, we're not going to be reviewing the next filler arc quite yet, because I have a movie to review. That's right, when we return, we're going to be going on a bit of a confusing journey, with our destination being the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Theatrical movie, The Pyramid of Light. That one may take a while. It's going to be a pretty extensive review. After all, if you've been watching my vlog reviews, Jules and I went over it extensively. But I might go a little more in depth than that even. I don't know, I really haven't decided yet. Anyway, look forward to it soon, guys. God bless, and take it easy. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of Waking the Dragons in general. And yeah, I will catch you guys later.